The Bernina 830 and 820 interfaces are a fair bit different than the newer 880 model. You may want to become familiar with these icons, as the icons are the same on both models, but they're hiding in different locations. This is an 830, and on screen right now, you can see in the top left-hand corner, the presser foot selection. If you have a number 1C foot on, select the number 1C. If you switch to any other feet, please select the appropriate foot. This will help keep your machine out of trouble. You can use the green check mark to exit that. Also on screen is the option to have your needle stop all the way up or all the way down. To change this on an 830, you can press and hold on the needle up down button for about 3 seconds, and it will change where your needle is stopping on screen. When the needle's in the bottom of this box, it will stop in the down position. This is your stitch width bar. Your stitch width can be changed by adjusting your stitch width knob. And your stitch length bar can be changed by selecting your stitch length knob. If you'd like to reset either of those to default, you can just select the box on there in the stitch that you're in, and it will return it to default. Your needle position left to right is indicated in this guideline here. To change it, you'll use your needle position left-right buttons to move back and forth. When you first turn your 830 on, your default setting will be to show the utility stitches menu, as indicated by the straight line and the zigzag. Your first 15 stitches are on screen, and you can scroll down to see the remainder. Your decorative stitches are hiding in that little squiggle. Each of these icons is a folder. If you're looking for stitch 417 or 416, you'll be looking in the 400 series folder. And you can scroll down to view all the stitches in that folder. If you'd like to navigate backwards, just select that squiggly line again, and it'll take you back to the main folders there. There's lots of fun stitches on this machine. I'd say try sewing a bunch of them out and see what all you have. Your fonts that you can stitch with are under the A. Those are each a folder and come with a full keyboard. You can find the other letters and switch to lowercase, toggling with this button here. Your buttonhole stitches are in this icon here. Again, lots of selection, including the button sew-on stitch and an eyelet. Your quilting stitches are in the option that looks like a quilt block. Lots of fun options in there too. The memory settings and your favorites can be saved. We'll talk about that in another video. Also on your default screen, you can change between, we'll go back into a letter here because it makes more sense. If you're in a stitch, you can choose to stitch a continuous line of A's, but if you'd like to spell a word, you'll need to find combination mode. Combination mode on this machine is the two flowers together at the bottom of this box. When you select combination mode, you'll be able to access combined stitches and spell out words or make patterns out of decorative stitches. More details will follow in another video. To toggle back out, make sure that you have just that zigzag selected up at the top. Other useful icons on your home screen here. This icon here allows you to elongate your stitches, make them wider or longer. If you're partway through sewing and you'd like to access the beginning of a sewing pattern, this is your pattern begin. If you'd like to mirror your stitch vertical axis, you can choose your mirroring function here. You're also able to mirror horizontally. Balance is a function that allows you to correct a decorative stitch that is not aligned properly. It can be used for decorative purposes as well, and usually behaves exactly opposite to how you think it will behave. We'll cover that in another video. One of the most important icons on this screen is your tension setting. Each stitch in your machine will have an automatic default tension. In this decorative stitch, the letter A, the default tension is 2.5. If we go back into our regular straight stitch, you'll note the default tension is 3. You're still able to change your tension as necessary using the stitch width or stitch length knobs. You can also change your presser foot pressure. Your presser foot pressure is how hard your presser foot is holding your fabric down in place. You might need to do this for something like a knit that's rippling as you sew, or thicker fabrics. The 830 and 880 also have the functionality of multi-direction sewing. You're able to tell your machine that you want to sew in a regular straightforward line at that 180-degree direction, but you can also tell your machine you want to sew directly sideways. This is a pretty cool feature if you're managing a bulky, awkward project. You're able to turn a knot function on whenever you'd like by selecting the knotting icon. On the 830 and 880, you're also able to record a stitch if you need a set number of stitches and want to use that same set number of stitches repeatedly. This is your recording icon here. You'll set the recorded length using your quick reverse button down below. If you'd like to tell your machine to do a certain number of repeats, such as in a decorative stitch, you can select this icon here and select the number of repeats you'd like sewn out. You can select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, or stitch that pattern continuously. Your safety settings for your machine are located in the yield symbol. In your yield symbol, you can tell your machine what type of needle you have in. The top left-hand icon is a regular standard needle. You can also tell it if you have a twin needle and the spacing between your twin needles, or if you have a specialty needle like a wing needle or the punchwork tool. You're also able to tell it here which stitch plate you have in place. The default stitch plate on the 830 machine and the 820 is the 9mm stitch plate. If you change out the stitch plate on your Bernina machine, I'd highly recommend using the safety function and telling it which stitch plate you have in place. If you switch to a 0mm plate, tell it that you have a 0mm plate. This will keep your needle from swinging wider and breaking the needle on your straight stitch plate. The specialty plate, the punch needle plate, will also give you other functionality. I'm sewing with a 9mm plate. I'm just going to return it to that setting. If you'd like to drop the feed dogs for something like free motion quilting, the ability to do that on an 830 is with this icon here. You'll note when the little zigzaggy line is below the straight line, your feed dogs are dropped and they will not be moving your fabric through the machine. It will also show up with your presser foot in the top left-hand corner. If you know the number of the stitch you'd like to access, you can use the 0 to 9 key to type it in. My favorite stitch is 914. Selecting the check mark will engage that stitch. You also have a clock on your Bernina 830. To set the time, you can select it and choose whether you want that in a 24-hour format or not. You're also able to set a timer. If you like to sew too long and not get up and remember to make dinner, use that alarm to tell yourself when it's time to be done. If your clock stops keeping time, you may need to replace the battery, which is located on the bottom side of the machine. The Bernina 830s and 820s can also remember the last 15 stitches that you chose. If you're working on a project and toggling between different stitches, you don't necessarily have to remember all the different stitch numbers. You can use that memory function for what was used recently to go back and select other stitches. Along the side of your screen are a whole bunch of other features. Let's cover those now. Your settings key is indicated by the arrow going into this diamond-shaped box. All of these functions are similar to what was covered in a previous Bernina video. The little book with the T on it is a tutorial. If you're unsure of how to do something on your machine, check out the tutorial icon here. There's information on threading, needles, presser foot, BSR, troubleshooting, and more. The little book that looks like the letter C is your creative consultant. In here, you can tell the machine what fabric you would like to work with. If I would like to work with toweling today, I could select toweling, and then along the bottom it shows a variety of functions you might be doing with this fabric. If you'd like to place a zipper in some toweling, you could tell it zipper. It'll give you a rough idea of what presser foot you might want to use, what size needle, and what type of stitch. If you select the check mark using the Creative Consultant, your machine will set your machine up for the parameters that it feels is most appropriate. These are just a guideline. They might not be right for your project, but a good place to start if you're completely unsure. If you would like to know what any icon on the screen means, you can select the question mark and then select a stitch or a function. It will tell you what you might use that stitch for, and it might give you other recommendations, such as what presser foot to use. If you're stepping away from the machine, say to go upstairs and answer the phone, select that eco button. It'll turn the backlight on your screen off and prevent your foot pedal from being engaged. This is awesome if you have pets that like to sleep near your foot pedal. To wake the machine back up, press the eco button once more. If you'd like to see what functionality is in your embroidery module on an 830, you can select the embroidery module here. And you're able to navigate the embroidery functions. That will be a whole nother series of videos for you. If you'd like to return to sewing mode, just press that embroidery module icon again. And you're back in the home screen. If you've made changes to any stitch on your machine, say made it wider and longer, or adjusted the tension, and you would like to return that stitch to default, you're able to hit the clear function. It will return that stitch to default.